Amina arrived in the lively town of Chilukani, with her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She held onto her suitcase with one hand and her hope with the other. As she walked toward her husband's family home, she kept smiling, maybe a little too much, trying to cover the nervous flutter twisting inside her chest. She told herself this was a new beginning, that she just needed to breathe and stay positive. But the moment she stepped through the doorway, she felt every drop of courage shake. Mama Zethu stood there waiting, her face sharp and unreadable. Her eyes moved slowly from Amina's head to her shoes, as if she were checking for a mistake. Amina tried to smile again, softer this time, hoping for even a tiny sign of welcome. Instead, Mama Zethu let out a short, dismissive laugh that cut through the air like a blade. It wasn't loud, but it carried enough meaning to make Amina's shoulders drop. In that small sound, she felt judged, unwanted, and suddenly very alone in a house that was supposed to be her new home. Still, she refused to let her smile fall. She let out a tiny laugh of her own, light and shaky, pretending the moment hadn't stung. She held her back straight, even though she felt smaller than before. Inside, she whispered to herself to stay strong, to not let her confidence crumble on the very first day. Even with that harsh welcome, she stepped forward hoping things would get better. Amina spent the whole morning helping around the house, hoping the first family gathering would feel warm and welcoming. She kept telling herself that today might be different, that maybe Mama Zethu would soften or at least try to include her. The long wooden table in the yard looked beautiful, covered with bright plates, bowls of steaming food and fresh flowers. Everyone was already seated, chatting and laughing. For a moment, Amina let herself believe she could simply walk in, sit down, and blend into the joy around her. She fixed her scarf, took a quiet breath, and stepped toward the table with a gentle smile. She wasn't even close to pulling out a chair when Mama Zethu lifted her head and gave her a cold, sharp glance. The whole table went still for a second. Then Mama Zethu said in a flat voice, "Don't sit with us." Just like that. No explanation, no softness, nothing. The words hit Amina harder than she expected. They didn't come with shouting or anger, but they carried a deep, heavy rejection that wrapped around her heart. She felt her throat tighten with a small, awe-like sting she couldn't swallow down. Her hand froze halfway to the chair. She tried to smile, pretending the words were a small misunderstanding, but her lips trembled. The rest of the family looked away quickly, staring at their plates as if something interesting had suddenly appeared there. A few cousins shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. No one said a single word to defend her. The silence made her feel as if she was standing alone in a room full of strangers who didn't want her there. Amina stepped back quietly, nodding like she accepted it, even though her heart felt heavy. She didn't trust her voice, so she didn't speak. She simply walked away slowly, trying not to let her steps show how deeply she had been hurt. She kept her back straight until she reached the doorway, but once she turned the corner, her body softened with sadness. The kitchen felt too big and too empty, but at least no one could see her there. She placed her hands on the counter, taking a long breath to steady herself. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. Crying here would only make her feel worse. She whispered to herself, it's okay," even though it wasn't. She tried to make herself laugh by telling small jokes under her breath, silly ones she used to say when she was a child trying to cheer herself up. Her voice was shaky, but she kept going, forcing the tiny jokes out just to stop the sadness from breaking her completely. She picked up a spoon and started stirring a pot that didn't even need stirring, just so her hands had something to do. She opened and closed drawers, moved plates from one place to another, anything to keep busy. She didn't want to stand still, because standing still meant thinking, and thinking meant breaking down. She imagined her mother's face, soft and gentle, telling her she was strong. She imagined her sister's laugh, the one that always lifted her up. Those memories calmed her a little, enough for her to breathe again. Amina listened to the laughter spilling in from the yard. Every sound felt like a reminder that she wasn't part of that circle yet, or maybe she wasn't meant to be at all. She wondered what she had done wrong, why she wasn't good enough for Mama Zethu. But then she forced herself to stop thinking that way. She whispered, maybe one day, and held on to that small hope like it was the only thing she had. She washed dishes that were already clean. She wiped the counter twice. She whispered more jokes, even though no one could hear them. It was her way of keeping her heart from breaking apart. She stayed in the kitchen until her breathing became steady again, until her smile felt real enough to wear in front of others, even if only to protect herself. When she finally peeked outside, she didn't try to join the table again. She simply stayed back, watching quietly, hugging her arms around herself and promising she would not give up. Even if today hurt, she told herself that one day she would find her place in this family. She didn't know how or when, but she held on to that hope and kept standing strong, even in the shadows. Over the next weeks, Amina tried harder than she had ever tried in her life. Every morning she woke up before everyone else, quietly sweeping the yard, boiling water for tea, and preparing breakfast. She made sure her smile was bright and warm, even on days when her heart felt heavy. She cracked small jokes while working, hoping someone would laugh with her, hoping someone would see she was trying. But most of the time, her jokes floated into the air with no reply. Still, she kept going. She wanted this family to feel like home, even if it didn't feel like it yet. Whenever Mama Zethu entered the kitchen, the air changed. Her eyes always carried that same cold look, as if she had already decided Amina didn't belong here. Amina would greet her with a cheerful voice, trying to break the ice, but Mama Zethu usually passed by without answering. Sometimes she even moved Amina's cooking pots aside, muttering that things were done differently in her house. Amina nodded and stepped back politely each time, though she felt something inside her sink a little more. She tried to show kindness in small ways. She washed everyone's clothes with care. She polished old pots until they shined. She learned everyone's favorite dishes and secretly practiced them at night so she could cook them perfectly one day. She wanted to make the family proud. She wanted Mama Zethu to see her as a daughter, not a stranger. But day after day, Mama Zethu treated her as if she was invisible. One afternoon, Amina made tea for everyone. She placed the cups gently on a tray, breathing in the warm smell to calm herself. As she carried it to the living room, she heard laughter and soft chatter. She smiled, hoping maybe this time things would be different. She handed the first cup to one uncle who took it happily. But instead of thanking her, he turned to Mama Zethu and said, "You always make the best tea." The rest of the family nodded and thanked Mama Zethu too, praising her hands, her skills, her hospitality. Not one person looked at Amina. Amina stood there holding the empty tray, her smile frozen for a moment. Something sharp pricked the back of her eyes, but she bit it back quickly. She didn't want tears to fall. Not here. Not in front of them. So she let out a soft, gentle laugh as if the mistake didn't bother her at all. "I'm happy you liked it," she whispered under her breath, though no one heard her. She went back to the kitchen slowly, each step feeling heavier. Once she reached the sink, she placed the tray down carefully, afraid that if she moved too fast, the sadness sitting in her chest would spill out. She pressed her fingers against her eyes for a second, trying to push the tears away. She whispered a few silly lines to herself, trying to lighten her own mood, the same way she used to when she was younger and scared of the dark. "It's fine, Amina," she murmured. "It's just tea." But it wasn't just tea. It was every moment she tried to show love, every smile she forced, every joke she whispered to hide the ache inside, every small thing she did to feel accepted. And every time the family looked through her, around her, past her, she kept telling herself she was strong. She kept telling herself things would change one day. Yet deep down, loneliness followed her around like a quiet shadow. Still, Amina didn't give up. The next morning she woke up early again, humming to herself as she swept the yard. She cooked with love. She cleaned with care. She helped anyone who needed it. She kept offering bright smiles even when they faded quickly. She kept laughing softly even when her chest felt tight. She kept hoping that maybe tomorrow would be kinder. Maybe tomorrow someone would see her. Maybe tomorrow Mama Zethu would soften even a little. And even though each day felt like walking uphill with a heavy heart, Amina continued. Because somewhere inside her, hope still lived. Even if it was small, even if it was tired. It was still there, holding her up, reminding her that kindness never goes to waste, even when no one sees it yet. One evening, Amina stood alone in the kitchen while the rest of the family laughed in the living room. Their voices floated through the doorway like warm music, but none of it touched her. She stirred a pot of stew slowly, letting the steam rise around her face. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft bubbling of the pot and her own steady breathing. She added spices one by one, remembering exactly how her late mother used to do it. Her mother always said that food tasted better when you cooked with love, even if your heart was tired. So Amina tried to put love into every stir, every pinch of salt, every slice of carrot. As she cooked, she hummed a song from her childhood, a song her mother used to sing while grinding spices under the mango tree. The melody was simple, warm, and full of memory. It wrapped around her like a gentle blanket, bringing comfort and pain at the same time. She could almost hear her mother's voice beside her, soft and steady, reminding her that she was strong, that she could survive anything. But the thought made her chest ache. She wished her mother were here to guide her, to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. The sound of laughter from the living room grew louder. Someone clapped, another person shouted a joke, and the whole room exploded into joy. Amina paused for a moment, her wooden spoon held still in the air. She listened. Not one person called her name. Not one person asked where she was. She felt like a shadow in a house full of light. She told herself not to think about it, but the truth pressed against her heart anyway. Her eyes warmed as she remembered her own family gatherings. Her father's booming laugh that shook the walls. Her sisters teasing her while they chopped vegetables together. Her mother singing over the pots while Amina danced around the kitchen pretending to be her assistant. Those memories felt so far away now, like another lifetime she could never return to. A small tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. It slid down slowly, landing near the edge of her smile. She quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand, shaking her head softly. "Not now," she whispered to herself. "Keep going, Amina." She didn't want her pain to fall into the food she was cooking with so much love. She leaned over the pot and breathed in the smell of the stew. It reminded her of home, of warmth, of safety. She felt a small spark inside her, a tiny flame of strength waking up again. She tightened her grip on the spoon and kept stirring with new determination. Her mother had taught her that cooking was more than making food. It was a way of healing, a way of giving pieces of your heart to others even when they didn't see it. Amina tasted the stew and smiled softly. It was good, maybe too good. She wished she had someone to share the moment with, someone who would taste it and say, "This is perfect." But instead, she was alone, quietly celebrating her success in a kitchen that didn't feel like hers. She chopped fresh herbs, sprinkled them into the pot, and let the colors bloom across the surface. She moved with gentle confidence now, her sadness mixing with pride in a way that softened her expression. She placed bowls on the counter and set the table with care, making sure everything looked beautiful even if no one would notice. Every sound from the living room reminded her of what she was missing, but instead of letting it break her, she let it push her forward. She wanted this family to see her. She wanted them to taste her heart in every bite. She wanted them to feel her presence even if they didn't call her name. As she wiped her hands on a towel, she looked around the kitchen and whispered, "One day." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a dream. It was a quiet hope she held close to her chest. A hope that maybe one day they would appreciate her. One day they would care. One day someone would notice how much she tried. She lifted the pot carefully and carried it toward the dining room, her steps steady and her heart a little lighter. The laughter from the living room rolled over her again, but this time she didn't shrink. She breathed in deeply and walked forward with quiet strength. Her mother's song lingered on her lips as she prepared to serve the meal, and even though her heart still ached, she kept moving, kept smiling, kept hoping, because she knew that kindness, even when unnoticed, always had a way of coming back one day. When Amina finished setting the table, she stepped back and wiped her hands on her apron. Her heart beat fast, not from the work, but from the hope she was scared to feel. She called everyone to eat, her voice soft but steady. The family filled the dining room with loud chatter, still smiling from whatever story they had been sharing in the living room. Amina stayed near the doorway, not wanting to push herself into their circle, but wanting to see their reaction. She held her breath as the first spoonfuls were lifted. The moment the stew touched their tongues, the entire room fell completely silent. Forks paused in midair. Eyes widened. Chairs stopped moving. For a second, Amina thought something was wrong. Maybe too much salt, maybe the spices were too strong. Her stomach tightened with worry. She stepped forward slightly, ready to apologize if needed. But then, out of nowhere, one cousin burst out laughing with joy. "What is this?" he shouted. "This is magic." Another aunt clapped her hands together and said, "This food tastes like heaven." Soon the whole table erupted into bright excitement. People started talking over each other, praising the stew, praising the flavors, praising whoever cooked this miracle. Amina stood in the doorway with her hand on her chest, feeling a shy smile tug at her lips. She looked down for a moment, hiding the happiness rising inside her. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, even if they didn't know she was the one behind the meal. Mama Zethu, sitting proudly at the head of the table, cleared her throat loudly. She lifted her chin and said, "I told you all I could still cook." Her voice carried a tone of confidence that made Amina almost laugh. The family nodded at first, used to giving Mama Zethu credit for everything in the house. Amina stayed quiet, watching, unsure whether she should step forward or stay where she was. Her smile stayed small, shy, and hopeful. But before Mama Zethu could enjoy her moment, one uncle leaned back in his chair and let out a big playful laugh. He pointed his spoon at her and said, "Sister, you couldn't cook something this good even in your dreams." The whole table roared with laughter. Someone smacked the table. Someone else nearly choked from laughing so hard. Mama Zethu's eyes widened in surprise, and for the first time ever, a faint shade of pink touched her cheeks. Amina covered her mouth quickly, trying to hide her own giggle. She had never seen Mama Zethu speechless before. The uncle kept teasing, shaking his head and saying, "We all know your food tastes like sadness when you're tired. This one tastes like joy. Who made it?" More voices joined in. "Yes, who cooked this? Tell us. This is too good to be normal. Someone has magic hands in this house." Amina stepped forward just a little, her smile growing. She didn't say anything yet, but her eyes sparkled with the tiniest bit of pride. The room felt warm, soft, alive. For the first time since she arrived, she felt like her heart was being gently held instead of pushed aside. Mama Zethu shifted uncomfortably, clearing her throat again. She tried to smile like nothing was wrong. "Well, maybe I taught someone well," she said, glancing quickly at Amina but looking away just as fast. Another cousin tasted the stew again, closed his eyes dramatically and said, "Whoever cooked this deserves a crown." Everyone cheered. Amina felt her chest fill with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She stood there, almost glowing, her hands twisting together shyly. She didn't step forward yet, but the joy in her heart was loud enough to drown out weeks of pain. Someone finally noticed her standing near the doorway. "Amina, come inside," a cousin called. "Why are you hiding back there?" More eyes turned to her now. Her cheeks warmed. She took a small step, then another, her smile growing as she felt the love in the room slowly reach for her. The stew that carried her mother's memory, her love, her effort, had finally opened a door she had been knocking on for weeks. And in that moment, watching the family laugh and praise the food she had poured her heart into, Amina felt something she hadn't felt since her wedding day. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she was finally finding her place in this home. Amina was still standing near the doorway, half hidden, half hopeful when her husband noticed her. He had been watching quietly the whole time, his eyes soft with pride. While everyone continued praising the meal, he stood up from his chair and walked over to her. Without saying a word, he took her hand gently. She looked at him with wide eyes, unsure of what he was about to do. Then he smiled, squeezed her hand, and guided her toward the center of the room. The noise in the dining room slowed as everyone turned to look. Amina felt her heart race, her palms warm, her steps small and nervous. Her husband placed her right beside him, rested a hand on her back, and said in a clear, happy voice, "Amina made everything tonight." The room froze for a moment. All the laughter, all the forks, all the sounds paused. And then, like a wave crashing onto shore, applause exploded around her. People clapped loudly, cheered, shouted her name with excitement she had never heard before. Amina let out a surprised laugh, a soft sound that escaped without her permission. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were warm and full of joy, not sadness. She blinked quickly, but the tears only shimmered brighter. Cousins jumped from their seats and rushed toward her. One hugged her tightly, saying the stew tasted like love. Another held her hands and told her she had a gift. An aunt kissed her cheek and said she brought new warmth into the house. Amina didn't know where to look or what to say. She just kept smiling, her cheeks glowing, her heart beating like a drum. She had never felt so seen, so appreciated, so welcomed. More family members gathered around her, patting her shoulder, praising the flavors, asking how she learned to cook so well. She answered shyly, her voice light and soft, telling them her mother taught her everything. They nodded with respect, saying her mother must have been a wonderful woman. Hearing that made her tears fall again, but this time she didn't hide them. They were happy tears, full of memory and gratitude. The youngest niece, a little girl with bright eyes and tiny braids, walked up to her slowly. She tugged gently at Amina's clothes and leaned close. In the sweetest whisper she said, "Oh, I knew it was you." The simple words hit Amina straight in the heart. She bent down and hugged the little girl, feeling something warm and soft melt inside her. That tiny whisper carried more love than any loud praise ever could. Behind her, the family kept celebrating. Some joked they wanted her to cook every day now. Others asked when she would teach them her secrets. Amina laughed again, this time openly, her body relaxing in a way she hadn't felt since she arrived. She looked around the room and saw something she had longed for: genuine smiles, genuine warmth, genuine acceptance. It felt like the walls of the house opened up and wrapped her in a big hug. Her husband stayed by her side, watching her with so much pride that she could feel it like sunshine on her skin. He leaned close and whispered, "See, I told you they just needed to know you." Amina looked at him with grateful eyes. She wanted to thank him, but all she managed to say was a soft, breathy laugh as she wiped her tears again. The family kept pulling her into conversations. They asked her about her favorite meals, her childhood memories, her dreams. They told her stories from the old days. They made room for her at the table without hesitation, offering her the best seat and serving her food with love. She felt her heart fill with something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. As the night went on, she smiled so much that her cheeks ached. Every hug, every compliment, every warm touch made her heart settle deeper into this home. The rejection she had felt before faded like smoke in the wind. For the first time, she saw a future here, bright, warm, and full of laughter. And as she sat at the table, surrounded by a family that now called her their own, she realized that this moment would stay in her heart forever. From that night on, everything changed for Amina in ways she never expected. The very next morning, before she even stepped out of her room, she heard her name floating through the hallway. Someone was asking, "Where's Amina? We need her." At first she thought she misheard, but when she walked into the kitchen, three cousins smiled at her at the same time, as if they had been waiting just for her. It felt strange, warm, and a little confusing. She wasn't used to being wanted in this house, but now everyone seemed to look for her before doing anything. Soon it became a habit. Before every meal, someone called her from across the house. "Amina, come taste the salt." "Amina, we need your hands here." "Amina, hurry before we start." She tried to act calm, smiling lightly as if it didn't touch her heart too deeply, but inside she felt something bloom, something soft and beautiful. Every time someone called her name with real excitement, A little piece of her healed. She would walk into the kitchen pretending to be relaxed, but her steps always grew lighter, her smile always grew brighter. During gatherings, it was even more obvious. If she was a few minutes late to the yard, the whole family paused like a show waiting for its star. One uncle would shout jokingly, "Stop everything. Where is our chef?" Another would tease, "Nothing starts until Amina arrives." The kids ran to the gate whenever they saw her coming, waving wildly as if she were a hero returning from a long journey. These small things felt huge to her. She kept acting humble, laughing shyly, but in her heart she held each moment like a treasure. She noticed the change in the way people looked at her. They didn't look through her anymore. They looked at her. They noticed when she was tired. They thanked her when she helped. They invited her into conversations instead of ignoring her. Even the older relatives, who were usually strict, began asking her for advice on spices or ingredients. Some even bragged to visitors that they had a daughter-in-law who cooked better than anyone in Chilukani. Every compliment felt like a warm light spreading through her chest. And slowly, very slowly, even Mama Zethu began to soften. She didn't change overnight. Her pride was tall and heavy, the kind that didn't bend easily. But each week, something small shifted. She started watching Amina in the kitchen with less judgment and more curiosity. Sometimes she'd lean against the counter and ask, "What are you adding there?" in a tone that wasn't sharp anymore. Other times she'd bring vegetables to Amina without saying anything, placing them near her as if silently offering help. There were moments when Amina caught Mama Zethu smiling at her from across the room, but the older woman would look away quickly, pretending she was focused on something else. She never admitted she was proud, never said it out loud, but her actions spoke quietly. She stopped correcting Amina unnecessarily. She stopped pushing her aside in the kitchen. She even began handing her certain tasks that she only trusted skilled hands to handle. And once, late in the evening, when everyone was cleaning after a big meal, Mama Zethu placed her hand lightly on Amina's back while passing behind her. It was such a small touch, quick and gentle, but it held years of meaning. Amina felt her breath catch for a second. She didn't turn around, afraid the moment would disappear, but she carried that tiny gesture deep inside her heart like a secret piece of sunshine. Life in the house grew lighter. The laughter around her felt real now, and for the first time since she arrived, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. She felt like she was part of something big, warm, and loving. And every night when she lay in bed, she whispered a quiet thank you into the darkness, grateful for how far she had come. She still worked hard. She still woke early and helped everyone she could. But now she didn't do it alone. People worked beside her. People laughed with her. People appreciated her. And she felt safe enough to let her real self shine, kind, gentle, loving, and full of strength. Even with all the growth, she stayed humble, never expecting too much, but always grateful for every smile, every laugh, every small moment of acceptance. And every time someone called her name with joy, she felt that same warm feeling sweep through her, reminding her she was finally, truly becoming part of this family. Months passed, and Amina's place in the family grew stronger with every meal and every smile she shared. When the biggest family gathering of the year arrived, she walked down the road expecting the usual noise and busy energy inside the yard. But as she came closer, she noticed something surprising. The gate was open, and the entire family was standing outside, waiting. Children were jumping, cousins whispering excitedly, uncles craning their necks to see if she was coming. The moment they spotted her, a loud cheer burst into the air. Amina stopped for a second, shocked, her heart swelling so fast it almost hurt. As soon as she stepped into the gate, everyone rushed forward, surrounding her with laughter and warm greetings. Someone shouted her name happily, another hugged her tightly, and the smallest children grabbed her hands as if she were the star of the day. She felt herself lifted into their joy, her feet barely keeping up as they pulled her closer into the crowd. Then she saw Mama Zethu walking toward her. The older woman's face held a shy smile, the kind she had been trying to hide for months. She let out a small, embarrassed laugh, the kind that softened her whole expression. Gently, she reached forward and touched Amina's arm, not with coldness but with real warmth. "You're finally here," she said quietly. Those simple words felt like a door opening in Amina's heart. As the family pulled her into the big circle of celebration, Amina looked around at all the faces glowing with happiness. And in that moment, she realized something powerful. She had become the heart of a home that once shut her out. She belonged here now, fully and beautifully.